Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's honestly a huge game changer: how ISO 14001-2026 transforms a symbolic, feel-good environmental policy into a hard, measurable 15% energy reduction on a corporate dashboard. If you've ever wondered how those top-level corporate sustainability promises actually become functioning day-to-day operational realities, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to look at the exact mechanisms that stop these commitments from being just good intentions and turn them into a highly active operational machine.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the green promise problem, then look at defining MS scope boundaries, leadership and business integration, making those objectives measurable, and finally, the corporate performance dashboard.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the green promise problem.
It's incredibly common to see companies claiming they're reducing environmental impact or operating responsibly. But let's be real, without specifics, that's kind of just symbolic greenwashing, right? Historically, some organizations set up these frameworks that focused way too much on just having the right paperwork, but they completely failed to ensure any real, physical improvements actually happened. Basically, they had a very nice binder sitting on a shelf, but absolutely zero measurable reduction in emissions or waste.
Well, an environmental management system, or EMS, under ISO 14001-2026 is the ultimate solution for this lack of accountability. It's essentially a framework that makes sure a company's environmental aspects, like their energy use or waste generation, are completely locked in with their strategic direction. It literally transforms good intentions into an active, functioning operational machine that produces real, verifiable results.
Moving right along to Section 2, defining EMS scope boundaries.
So, to make a promise real, you first have to draw a hard boundary around where the rules actually apply. When an organization defines the scope of its EMS, it has to accurately reflect its true environmental risk profile. You can't just include your nice, squeaky clean corporate headquarters and intentionally leave out your outsourced, high-emission logistics fleet just because it's a headache to manage. Or, say, include a basic manufacturing plant, but conveniently ignore the hazardous chemical lab right next door. If you have operational influence over those high-impact areas, leaving them out is a major nonconformance.
And believe me, auditors will catch this artificial limitation. Why? Because excluding high-risk activities completely distorts the true environmental footprint of the organization. ISO 14001-2026 absolutely demands transparency. Think about it. If a construction company tries to exclude its temporary sites where all the actual dust, noise, and waste are generated just to breeze through an audit, no way, they're going to fail. Scope boundaries have to be built on logical, risk-based evidence, not just convenience or cost avoidance.
Okay, that brings us to Section 3, Leadership and Business Integration.
Now that we have our boundaries, what about the people at the top? Well, Clause 5.1 demands that executives don't just sign a policy and disappear. That era is officially over. Under the 2026 standard, top management must demonstrate actual, hands-on accountability. They have to actively fund and weave these environmental goals right into the company's DNA. If the goal is reducing emissions, leadership needs to be cutting the checks for that new energy-efficient machinery. It's not a side project. It has to be integrated into their daily decision-making.
To really see what true integration looks like, think of how a manufacturing company seamlessly embeds this focus into everyday workflows. Environmental management simply cannot be some siloed, isolated department anymore. It has to be in procurement, where they evaluate suppliers. It has to be in design, picking out eco-friendly materials before a product even exists. It lives in production, through waste reduction. And finally, it sits front and center for management during performance reviews. That's the whole shebang, working together.
Next up, Section 4, making objectives measurable.
So here's where the rubber meets the road. The contrast between a vague goal and a compliant one is literally night and day. ISO 14001 requires objectives that establish a baseline, a timeline, and a strictly quantifiable target. If you just say, improve sustainability, you're going to fail an audit because, well, how do you even measure that? You can't. But stating you will reduce electricity consumption by 15% within 2 years, now that is verifiable. It proves to everyone that real, undeniable environmental improvement is actually happening.
But setting the target is only half the battle. To actually hit that specific 15% target, you've got to build a structured action plan that answers 4 critical questions: what, who, how, and when. ISO 14001-2026 doesn't consider an objective valid unless there's a clear pathway to get there. By spelling out exactly what needs to be achieved,
who is responsible, how it'll happen, and when it's expected, you're making sure nobody is confused about their job. This plan is the crucial bridge between a high-level strategic promise and ground-level operational control.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, the Corporate Performance Dashboard.
This is where all that strategic planning turns into raw, beautiful operational data. That massive number? It isn't just a dream anymore. A corporate performance dashboard establishes a clear, measurable objective to reduce energy consumption by 15%, linking a high-level policy commitment directly to specific operational key performance indicators. This is exactly what the standard is all about, taking this abstract, fuzzy idea of environmental protection and translating it into a hard, tracked KPI that leadership actually has to answer for.
When you visualize this progress, it's pretty amazing. You get real-time data showing exactly how close the facility is to that goal, like hitting 12% energy saved with just 3% left to go. Getting this kind of clarity requires highly reliable digital monitoring systems, like smart meters, constantly feeding data back to the execs. It definitively proves that those action plans, like the HVAC upgrades we mentioned earlier, are genuinely doing their job on the ground.
By tracking those kilowatt hours quarter over quarter, leadership can definitively prove their investments in smart systems and operational controls are working. Seeing a downward trend from Q1 right through to Q3 is exactly what an auditor wants to see. It screams continuous improvement. Plus, it means that if things start to slip, management can instantly spot the deviation and fix it before a tiny hiccup turns into a major nonconformance. Data-driven decision-making is absolutely crucial for proactive environmental management.
So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to really challenge how your own organization handles its green promises. Is your environmental policy just a symbolic binder sitting dusty on a shelf, or is it driving real, measurable data on your dashboard? A true environmental management system under ISO 14001:2026 requires rigorous scope definition, rock-solid executive leadership, incredibly specific action plans, and relentless data-driven monitoring. It's time to take those policies off the shelf and put them to work. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.